Hi, I'm David Butler, National Sales Coordinator for Steeman Inc. Today I'll be talking to you about Cartoni fluid heads, pedestals, jibs from Italy. PAG, batteries and lights from England, as well as Evermarine for underwater housings and rain capes. Today I'm going to talk to you about onboard lighting, an essential tool that a shooter uses when doing interviews or outdoor interviews and has to do it very quickly. You don't know what your light source is going to be when you go into a building. It may be fluorescent lighting that is insufficient, so you're going to want to have an onboard light to be able to highlight the subject that you happen to be dealing with. Your camera typically has a battery. You can carry a battery belt. You can have different sources that are going to allow you to do onboard camera light to match your surrounding lighting situation. You can do anywhere from 25 to 100 watt on onboard lighting system. Indoors, you're going to use tungsten, which is a filament which puts out typically yellow light. Outdoors, you're going to want to use what's called white light, or HMI. It's a completely different type of bulb from the tungsten, which is a filament. The HMI is actually an arc which creates and burns off on a gas, so it gives you true daylight. If you take a tungsten bulb and go outdoors with it, you'll have a funny yellow tinge to your subject, which is something that a shooter definitely does not want. If you're going to go outdoors, you don't want to take a tungsten lighting system because effectively it's yellow light. You're going to want to turn it into what's called white light. This is a dichroic filter that allows you to take a tungsten bulb, which puts out yellow light through a filament, put a dichroic filter on it, which will turn it to daylight. The only downside of using a dichroic filter, it is just drop the power of the lighting or the bulb that you happen to be using. If you're going to go outdoors, you're not going to want to shoot with tungsten. You're going to want to shoot with a dichroic filter, which gives you true daylight. At this point, we are flooded. We're going to spot it now. So you can see the intensity drops a bit with the dichroic filter, so you may at some point in time want to go to an HMI bulb. The diffusion filter is utilized to soften the light, but in addition, it allows you to reduce the intensity of the light by one stop. When you walk into a situation that the existing lighting isn't sufficient and you want to get more and or less lighting onto an individual, for instance, if the lighting is all coming from above and you need light coming in, but the onboard lighting by itself is too intense, utilize your diffusion filter to be able to not only soften but lessen the intensity on your subject. Now we're going to drop down the diffuser to let you see how it not only softens it, but it reduces the intensity on my face. And we're going to again spot and flood. That's spot and that's flood. You can also fine-tune the intensity of the light by either spotting or flooding it. If you spot it, it's going to be very intense on the individual that you happen to be shooting. If you flood it, it's going to make it flat and very smooth. This is full flood. This will give you a nice smooth feature to your subject. What we're going to do is we're going to slowly transition over to a spot. With us follically challenged individual, that may give you a big hot spot on the individual's head. So you may want to come back and do a flood rather than a spot. It's going to allow you to adjust the intensity of the light as well. Okay. The barn doors are going to allow you to actually frame your subject. So if it's too intense on either side of you for whatever reason, you can actually take the barn doors and narrow the path of the light to your subject. If when you drop down your diffusion filter, the light is still too harsh, you're able to obtain additional filters through a soft diffusion kit. I happen to have 2 sheets of diffusion on this particular kit, and you can see that the shadows completely disappear but retain most of the intensity. We've talked about the applications of an onboard lighting system. Some of the benefits of a PAG light is this has been on for about 40 minutes. A lot of systems out there, You would severely burn your hand if you touched the system after 40 minutes. The PAG light stays very cool. It is manufactured out of a composite that doesn't retain heat. It draws in air and disperses it out the top, so it doesn't have a tendency to absorb. So once you touch it, we've left these on for 5, 6, 7 hours, have grabbed them and put them away. Another beneficial feature of this particular system, you'll notice we don't have a dimmer on it. But what we're able to do that a lot of other systems are not able to do is we can actually change modules. I can change it from a 35 watt to a 50 watt that fast. The other benefit of this system is that it actually allows you to go from a tungsten, again a filament, to true daylight. This is your HMI. It has an internal ballast, so you don't have to run any cables down to an external ballast. It takes about 20 seconds to become flicker-free and noiseless. Remember, it's an arc, not a filament that just filters on. It is a white light or a blue light. If you're outdoors, it becomes a white light. You can see the intensity is 100 watt of equivalent output of a tungsten bulb, but it only draws 24 watts. You can use a diffusion to soften, again spotting and flooding. HMI, something that you really need to know, is not necessarily for talking heads where you turn your light on and off, which you can do with a tungsten light. HMI is an arc. Remember, it's burning off a gas. So once you turn it off, it may take time to turn back on. It's not meant to be turned on and off. In fact, the longer you leave it on, the longer the bulb is going to last. If you've left it on for 10, 15, 20 minutes, you'd have to hot strike it if you turned it off and then turned it right back on again. Oftentimes, HMI will not hot strike. I really want to emphasize that a tungsten bulb costs about $13. An HMI bulb, this HMI bulb, costs $175. So you want to be very, very gentle. Again, one of the other advantages of HMI is that it is, in fact, 100 watts of equivalent output to a tungsten, but only pulls 24 watts. It's actually an 80 watt bulb. You're using the full efficiency of the light rather than taking a tungsten and putting a dichroic on it, losing half of the intensity. If you really like the intensity of HMI and want to use it indoor and need the yellow light, we do have a filter that will allow you to, in fact, turn yellow or white light to yellow light. It's a reverse dichroic effectively, not tungsten to white light, but it's white light to tungsten. This particular head effectively allows you to have 3 to 4 to 5 light sources in one head, both being able to spot, flood, dichroic, diffusion, and barn doors. Taking tungsten, anywhere between 25 up to 100 watt bulb, as well as an HMI bulb. One of the things that you're able to do with a PAG system that you can't do with some of the other systems out there is if you have too much intensity, this is a 75 watt bulb, you can actually hot swap, which means take out the light without having to turn the head off. So you can yank the light out and put in a smaller bulb. The benefit of this is that if you go from 35 to 50 to 75, you can do it in a heartbeat. There's no changing. Now keep in mind, when working with an HMI bulb, you cannot hot strike. You have to turn off the light system itself, change the bulb, put in the HMI, and then turn it back on. Again, it will take about 15 to 20 seconds to become flicker-free and noiseless. PAG also has what's called our Verilux. The benefit of a Verilux is that it is a dimmer, although it dims very little, about 15-20% at max. The benefit of the Verilux is it regulates the draw on your battery to an even 12 volts. So if your battery is completely full or almost empty, the color temperature will remain the same, having the same draw on the battery. If you're on a budget, but you need a lighting system to get yourself started, this is a very simple way to go. It's a lighting kit that has a 20-watt bulb in it. The kit comes with the head, of course, a 20-watt bulb, changeable. You can change it to a 30 and or a 10. Very few people have ever changed it from a 20-watt though. Comes with a dichroic filter, daylight. Comes with a diffusion filter to soften the light. Comes with 2 barn doors. It comes with the battery, with the charger, and a strap to put over your shoulder. The M light is the same as the C6 light as far as size is concerned, but it is 12 volt, so it can go into some of the larger camera systems utilizing their battery sources. There are basically 3 different chemistries of batteries. There's nickel metal hydride, nickel cadmium, and lithium. They come in all sorts of different configurations. You can have it in an MP style, which is probably the least expensive of all of the batteries. This happens to be a NiCad battery. The different chemistries, NiCad being probably the least friendly to the environment, will probably in the very near future go away completely. Nickel metal hydride is very friendly to the environment. It's as efficient as a NiCad, but it doesn't last as long. But this is the battery that a lot of the shooters in the long term will be utilizing. The third type of chemistry is a lithium battery, relatively new to the industry. The reason that a lot of people are going to this particular chemistry is that the batteries are much, much lighter than your typical brick, about a third the weight. They last longer, and in addition, they have no memory. Memory meaning that if you take this particular battery, run it down halfway, and plug it into your charger, oftentimes that will reduce the amount of runtime that a battery has, or the amount of cycles that it can take, a cycle being discharged and charged or utilized. Nickel metal hydride and NiCads do have memory, so after you run it down halfway, plug it into your charger, recharge it, it may lose some of its power. You always want to take on a nickel metal hydride or a NiCad, drain them completely before recharging. And whereas with lithium, you can charge it at any point in time. But even with lithium, you need to discharge it about every 6 cycles in order to maintain the efficiency of the battery. Again, nickel metal hydride, which is a brick, it weighs a lot, versus lithium, about the third the weight, has the same capacity as NMH, but in fact will last longer. There are many different types of connectors that you can utilize with a particular battery. NPs are all pretty much the same regardless of the manufacturer. They drop into a slot and are connected through the pins at the bottom of the NP battery. The lithium batteries have 3 different types of connectors. This is the V-mount lock that will go typically with any type of Sony connector. There's also a gold mount. There's also a PEG lock. So there are 3 different types of connectors that you can utilize. You may have a Sony camera that has a gold mount plate on the back, meaning you'd have to go out and buy a battery that in fact has a gold mount. You may have a Panasonic that has a V-mount. Ergo, you want to be able to get a battery that has a V-mount lock on it. This is PEG's Quasar charger. One of the benefits of the PEG chargers is that they are all chemistry. They will in fact charge MPs, they will charge nickel metal hydride, NiCad, as well as lithium. If we had a 4-channel charger, you could have literally all different batteries on the same charger at the same time. It will charge them individually. Because of the technology in the charger, each battery has a chip in it that tells the charger what chemistry it's charging. The charger automatically adapts to that particular chemistry. Our connectors are either PEG lock, gold mount, and or V-lock. So you can adapt to whatever system you happen to have. You may even have other manufacturers' batteries. Typically, a PEG battery charger will charge their batteries. This is a PEG lock battery, which we offer on only our NiCads and NMH batteries. This is the PEG lock connector to our charger. Simply set it in, lock it down. That's all there is to it. Some of the PEG chargers can even be used as a power supply through an XLR. Not all, a couple. As an extension to both the battery charging and the power supply, if you need to charge a battery that is not a, for instance, PAG lock, we're able to take an adapter, and this would actually charge or adapt to a V-lock battery. The way we do this is that these little holes on the front of the charger are called our PP90 adapters. Simply attach the adapter to your battery, plug the PP90 into the front of the charger, and away you go. We also have adapters that will allow you to charge gold mount, PAG lock, as well as MP batteries. If you're a filmmaker and want to do some underwater shooting, Evermarine supplies different size bags for different size cameras. This is an underwater housing that will allow you to go down to 30 feet without any leakage. It has holes in it that allow you to control your cameras. Depending on your camera, different configurations will take place. It's got a glass lens insert where you actually set your lens in. It snaps into the lens insert. That way you have clear vision all the way through. It's very easy to put together. It's very affordable. It comes together with with a clasp. Simply take the clasp off, pop open the bag itself. Drop your camera in, making sure that it's secure, and all of the holes are lined up for the different pieces of equipment that you're going to need. Your zoom, your focus, your on and off switch. The bag comes with a foam spacer that allows you to set your camera so the lens lines up with the lens on the front of the cape. It also comes with a lens insert that allows your particular lens to snap into the lens of the housing. We also include in your kit a silica pouch that allows you to keep moisture away from your camera. My suggestion always is if you're going to use something along these lines, put a loaf of bread into it, seal it up, dunk it underwater. Make sure that there aren't any cuts or seals that have been broken. We had one individual that opened up his box with a box cutter, put a nice little slice right across it. Didn't happen to notice the slice, took a very expensive camera, put it in, went underwater. You know what happened. The two plastic pieces are sealed between two plates of metal that are corrugated, so you can see along here, and they're tied together with 3 tie-down knobs, each one sealing out all moisture from the inside. For those of you that want to shoot in the rain, you need a way to protect your camera. You don't necessarily need an underwater housing, but an affordable way is an Evermarine rain cape. This can be utilized not only in the rain, but in hurricanes. A lot of the soldiers for Desert Storm used it because of blowing sand. It just slips over your particular camera. Controls are fully seen through the plastic, so you know exactly what you're doing. Just reach underneath and control your camera. All of the Evermarine products come with glass lenses, so your lens will match up beautifully with the lens that's on the Evermarine underwater housing and or rain cape. This contraption is the PAG Orbiter. It's a shoulder mount support system that allows you to stand in one position for extremely long periods of time. Some of the other benefits is that, unlike some of the other systems that are out there, it both pans and tilts. Most of the systems won't pan, so you have that off the cliff look when going around corners. I don't care how small your camera is, at some time you're starting to shake if you're trying to hand hold it. You need some type of support system. The PAG Orbiter comes along with a belt. Comes with a support pod. Comes over your back. Now this system, push down very lightly, and it allows you to just raise or lower to the level that you're going to be comfortable at. If you want to tilt, all you do is unlock the tilt knob, and you can tilt. Now remember, this system can move backward or forward to meet your specific body type. It'll also, which is the unique part of this system, allow you to tilt. This system, what happens normally is if when you're coming around a corner, that's all you get. This particular system allows you to follow as you're going around the corner. and then tilt. You're the pedestal, you're the up and down, and this is the tilt, and this is the pan. Another one of the benefits is the orbiter comes with 2 straps, one for each side. Other systems that are out there always feel as though they're going to drop off your shoulder, which is a very uncomfortable feeling. Once you're strapped in, it doesn't go anywhere, so you can move and feel comfortable and be assured that it's not going to go anywhere. One of the benefits of the PEG orbiter, unlike some other systems that are shoulder mounted, is that they can actually pan as well as tilt. Other systems that don't allow you to pan, what happens is that if you're following somebody, you're going around the corner, it's that off the cliff look. It looks very unnatural. This one, as you're walking around a corner, you can actually follow your subject right around the corner, very naturally, very comfortably. One of the other benefits is that once you get good with it and you lock it down and you have the configuration set to your particular body shape, you can actually put your hands down and stand for very long periods of time watching your monitor, taking a shot without any movement from your chest, from your breathing. The tilt lock is on this side, pan lock is right here. By zoom controls or focus controls, put them on your handles, connected to your camera. That way you don't have to reach up and fool around with your camera. You can just push your tilt or your zoom and your focus. Remember, when you're using an orbiter, no gorilla hands, little light fingers do all the working. You don't have to grip it. Don't utilize all the energy that you have. So very light fingers, zoom control, power control. This knob allows you to actually rotate the camera 45 degrees, 90 degrees, but your hands are still forward, so you can still see what's going on. Lock it back down. Readjust your camera, put it back in, lock it back down. This knob, because every body type is different, you may have slanted shoulders, somebody else may have flat shoulders, allows you to manipulate this particular section in and out along this post. So it balances different. The knob over here allows this complete section to be able to go forward or back. So if you wanted to have a closer look, or if you wanted to use your eyepiece rather than your monitor, you could do so. Most people like it a little further away from them so they can actually watch their monitor. And it has a tendency to balance a little better. This joint allows you to, again, tilt as well as Dutch. So you can do Dutch moves, you can do up and down, you can tilt, and where you need to go. That rubber joint will follow you. The system, again, allows you to maneuver all joints back and forth. In addition to this one knob up here will allow you to adjust your camera for balancing purposes. Remember, if you have it too far forward or too far back, it's just going to flop back on you when you release the tilt knob. The system comes with a counterweight, but we found that using a battery to run both your camera and your light works very well. There are 2 basic types of pan and tilt heads, one being a friction head, effectively 2 pieces of metal and or rubber rubbing against each other. The tighter you put it, the more friction you have. The other type would be a fluid head. A fluid head is obtained through many different ways. Each one of the manufacturers has their own process of developing it. Cartoni has a system that allows you, it's called a labyrinth, and it has several different discs that are looped together, 2 pieces of metal coming together. As they push together, the fluid is compacted, and that gives you your nice fluid feel. No metal touches metal within this labyrinth. There's also, in each one of the systems that I've mentioned, a counterbalance. All cameras have a different weight, depending on how you pack it up. If you're going to put lights on it, if you're going to put monitors on it, if you're going to put teleprompters on it. Most of the manufacturers have fluid heads that will allow you to have as low as 0 to 2 to 3 to 4 pounds, all the way up to 200 pounds. What you're trying to accomplish is the ability with your particular weighted camera is to point it in any direction and it will stay right where it belongs. What you're trying to affect is that if you're pointing it 45 degrees down, that it's a 0 balance. Nothing pushing up on it, not allowing it to drop any further down. That's what you always want to set first is your counterbalance, and then adjust your drag to your personal preference. Each one of our systems, Cartoni's, is unique. We have systems that will handle anywhere between 0 to 22, 15 to 35. This particular system will handle from 18 to 35 pounds. It's our EFP workhorse. I'm going to swing it around, allow you to see some of the adjustments that you're going to need in order to adjust your particular camera. This is your counterbalance. Remember, you always want to set your counterbalance first. You want to be able to get to that 0 position, to wherever you put it, it's going to stay. And then you want to be able to set your tilt drag, which will allow you to have that nice fluid feel. You can have it very stiff, you can have it very light, depending on how much you want to work. Your pan drag is a knob at the bottom, also a fluid feel. It's also a labyrinth. So you can adjust that to wherever you want it to go. Remember, if you're going to put a longer lens on your camera, you're going to have to stiffen up your drag because you want that nice fluid feel. You don't want any shimmy or shake or vibration in your shot. In summary, counterbalance is reaching the position that allows your camera to stay in one position. Nothing pushing up from the bottom, not allowing it to drop down from the top. Drag gives you that nice fluid feel, gives you the stiffness that you need, especially with long lenses. And short lenses for that matter. You don't want any vibration, you don't want any shimmy, you don't want any kickback on. In other words, you don't want to pan over and have it come back. You don't want it to drop down, bounce back up. What we're going to talk about now is how to set your camera up. Each one of the fluid heads that you'll deal with has a different type of quick release plate. This one has a standard Euro plate. You'll attach your camera, or your camera plate for that matter, lock it down. It automatically locks down. Then you need to balance your camera. You want to be able to have it fall forward at the same pace that it falls backwards. In other words, balancing it out. So you can get that proper feel, especially when you start adjusting your counterbalance. Once you get that, you lock it down. And you may be guessing to some extent. You'll feel it kind of, it's that way or it's that way. Then you want to zero everything out. You want to zero your counterbalance out. You want to zero your drag out. Keep hold of your pan arm and allow it to fall forward at the same pace it falls backwards while on the fluid head. That way you'll know if you have proper balance. Then you set your counterbalance. Remember, counterbalance always first. You're zeroed out, so it should fall forward and fall back. It shouldn't be in one position. So you want to set your counterbalance. Do 3 turns initially, 3 at a time. Allow it to fall forward, fall back. If you're not close, do another 3 turns. If you're close, do 1 turn, do a half a turn. Quarter turns can make a huge difference in your counterbalance. Once you have your camera to the position that it will stay, then you can set your drag. That's where you get the nice fluid feel, the stiffness if you will. Some of the E&G shooters out there are gorillas. They love to work. They have it very, very stiff. Some don't like it so stiff, so they'll loosen it up. Some of the smaller DV fluid heads and or friction heads have a smaller bowl. It's a 75 millimeter bowl. It's very small. If you're going to get any of the toys, goodies, mini jibs, any of the toys that you're going to utilize, you're going to need a 100 millimeter bowl, something to keep in mind. This particular system comes with a 100 millimeter bowl. The only thing that will ever break on a Cartoni is the tilt lock knob, and it's intended to do so. What will happen is that you'll put your tripod together. It'll still be standing up, of course. You have the lock on, it'll fall over, and the knob will break. It's intended to do so. It's intended to break at this position right here. The reason being is that we don't want the shaft to the internal brake to break. Also, these are not brakes. These are stops. So if you find that you can do this when the brake is on, doesn't mean that it's not functioning properly. It just means that you don't have it tight enough, and you shouldn't do that while the brake is on anyway because you'll strip the pad on the brake. We suggest that you transport in a case, preferably bubble wrapped, with all the locks on. So if it does take a hit, it allows the head to maneuver on the tripod either up or down without bending or taking a major hit. Typically all of the manufacturers have 3 different sizes of bowls. You have a 75 millimeter, 100 millimeter, 150 millimeter, as well as a 150 millimeter flat base, which is typically called a Mitchell mount. This is the bowl, B-O-W-L. This is the ball, B-A-L-L. Okay, for the creative shooter, this is a wonderful tool. It's a jib. It allows you to go high to low. So if you have a shot that you want to go from tabletop to shoulder height, you can follow the subject or the object directly up. Because you don't want to work too hard, once you set your camera up, you want to be able to counterbalance it to where your jib stays where it is, or with a very light touch, because you want to be able to work just with fingertips. You don't want to be able to have to grab, because that's going to give shimmy and shake to your shot. So with 2 fingers, 3 fingers, you want to be able to manipulate or maneuver the jib wherever you want it. These are the counterbalances on the back. We also have a fine-tuning counterbalance, and you'll notice when I put it up, it falls forward. They're very sensitive. When I put it all the way back, it comes up automatically. So you need to find that fine-tune point where your camera and the fluid head will stay where you leave it. The head of the jib allows you to maneuver the fluid head to any position you care to have it. So if you want it off to the side, to be able to maneuver it better, you can set it off there, lock it back down. It also allows you to, with some doing, detach this and actually turn it underslung so your camera is hanging upside down from the bottom. This allows you to, when setting it off to the side like this, do some very creative shots with your pan and tilt head. Remember, when we were just static, staying the same, it did stay the same up and down. Now you want to be able to utilize your fluid head with the panning and tilting motion, but utilizing the jib at the same time. So you can actually follow people around, go up and down, things you can't do with a normal fluid head, or excuse me, a normal tripod. Each shooter is different, it's all preferential. You can put your pan arm up, out, down. When you're on a jib like this, you might want it in a down position because you can maneuver it better to go up and down, around and around, follow somebody. So you can, it doesn't get in the way, you're not reaching over your jib. So you just utilize it from the bottom. Now you're not going to be able to go all the way around because you're going to have a stop on it. That's one of the benefits of having it straight up. There are 2 different leveling bubbles attached to the system. One on the jib, one on the fluid head. To do the level bubble on the jib, you can maneuver both of these arms as well as back here, which allows you to take the head and put it up and or down. Remember, you can take in another creative shot that you might want to do is you can turn it like that. So you can turn your camera to any position you want to. The other leveling bubble is on the fluid head itself. So once you have those 2 in conjunction, it will be leveled. This is a studio pedestal, albeit a small studio pedestal. This isn't a full build-up steering ped. It's a pedestal that allows you to have about 110 pounds, which is a good size studio configuration, but still be able to manipulate your pedestal in any position that you want to go. It also allows you to go up and down, as most studio pedestals do. This is a standard air pump. When you have your camera build up, you want to put in enough pressure that allows it to rise above, overinflate it, in other words. So now you want it to be able to rise and lower on its own. You always want to overinflate your camera, because what you're going to do next is deflate it a little bit in order to get it to the point where your camera just feathers. In other words, will go up and down by itself. Generally takes a small tool to be able to deflate it a little bit. There's a gauge on the pedestal itself. There's also a gauge on the pump when you're pumping it up so you can see what you're putting into it. If you have too much camera for too little of pedestal, you could in fact overpressurize it. If you do overinflate it, we do have a safety valve on the back side that will blow out the air. Once you overinflate it, you want to deflate it. Let out enough air that you find a position that it just feathers. So wherever you set it, the camera's going to stay. Your camera operator doesn't constantly want to be going up and down. I don't have it completely set up. Make sure that you take baby steps when letting air out. Simply because if you over-deflate it, you're going to have to get your pump back out and pump it back up again and deflate it again. I also want to point out that in this system, these are studio wheels. These are specifically for studios. Typically there's a paint on the floor that if you use pneumatic wheels, the tires, the rubber ones, it's going to squeak, 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 very similar to an automobile in a parking lot. You don't want pneumatic wheels in a studio. They are specifically for outdoors. On the other hand, you don't want to take your studio wheels and go out onto cement and or blacktop. It'll just destroy the wheels. A pedestal is the ultimate studio piece of equipment. It not only allows you to go up and down, get height on your subject, it allows you to move positions rapidly, unlike a tripod. A tripod you'd have to lift up and move. You can't shoot while you're doing this. A dolly you can actually continue to shoot as you're maneuvering your camera. There are only two adjustments on the pedestal that allow you to either lock it down, meaning that you put it in one position, lock it down, stay away. Or if it's too smooth, if the movement is just too light for an individual, they can adjust the drag, which means it's putting a little bit of tension on it. In addition, there are two locks on the pedestal itself, or on the dolly portion of the pedestal itself. One allows you to lock the wheel in position. Once you have it locked in, you can lock all three in the same position and it'll go up and back. The other locking mechanism is the brake. That's where you want to set it in one position. You don't want it to move around. You lock the brake and it stays right where it belongs.